Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Here is something that I saw that I've never seen before. Brother Oshing, is that what you're going to say?
Remember, the first idea of this rainbow in the sky came through after the flood.
Mm-hmm.
So let me hear your thoughts.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. But I'm saying that there's something about this covenant that I've never seen before, Elder Brutus. You go back and read that text again, and it says that I have made this covenant with you and with every living thing. Did you see that? So it wasn't just with man alone. Every creature, Sister Brown. And when I read that, I thought to myself then, does that mean that the creatures have some value to God and then should also have some value to us? You know, there's a passage in the Bible that says that, there's a passage, I think somewhere in one of those books, either the Psalm or Proverbs, where it says that a righteous man careth for his animal. You ever read that? You ever read that anywhere? A righteous man careth for his animal. But then he went on to say that even the, what is that? Something, what's it? The tender, I love that. And even the tender mercies of the wicked is what? I don't remember the rest of it. You're saying it, Bishop, but I can't hear it. But the point here is that I'm trying to bring across is that the covenant was not just for us alone. When I read this, I tried to stretch my mind, and I want to bring something out here, out of this. That's why I'm stopping here. Today we have one big issue. This week, my brother told me, I think it was last night I was talking to him, how the Prime Minister of England went up to some place and he was talking about all this global warming thing. You all are aware of global warming, right? And I said to him that you cannot blame the Prime Minister of England for giving a speech on global warming because the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Prime Minister of Jamaica belonged to the Queen, and the King, which we know is Prince Charles, he has been assigned to head the global warming thing. I don't know if you all know that, but he is head, what do they call it? Head cook and bottle washer, right? Behind the global warming, and that is coming out of the monarchy of England. So how do you expect the Prime Minister of Jamaica not to talk about it, right? Now, God said, this rainbow is a covenant, and it is emphasized so often that any time you see this rainbow, that don't be afraid. You must remember what I said in my covenant. I will not, what? Destroy this world again by a flood. Which brings something to mind with the global warming thing. You know, we have all of this global warming. The earth is going to be destroyed, and this is going to be happening, and all these things that we hear is happening. The ice caps are melting, and everything is happening, and the world. They have predictions as to when the world is actually going to come to an end because of global warming, right? Now, I am not saying that there is no global warming, but what I want you to understand is that this world in which we are living, no man can destroy it. This world can only be destroyed by God. Now, should we be careful how we do what we do? Should we take care of the animals? Should we take care of the plants? Should we take care of all the things around? Yes, we should. We have a role to play. But all that we are doing cannot save it, because it will only be destroyed when God made that determination. God says that this world will never again be destroyed by a flood. So God knows what's going to destroy it. It's not a flood. We read in the scriptures that it's going to be fire. And when that happens is when what? Jesus comes. So with all, and you know, we could go into this global warming discussion because, you know, all of this COVID thing here that we are going through, that's a part of the whole. And you know, that you all don't want to hear that type of stuff because. Yes, Brother Oshing.
Going back, I'm going to make a point. Going back to the word remember.
Mm-hmm.
I remember doing a sermon years back on the 3 R's. The 3 R's.
Mm-hmm.
Remember their creator in the days of their youth. Remember Lot's wife. And remember the Sabbath.
Okay.
I think I did it at a funeral service.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to emphasize the point that people need to remember.
Yes.
Back to the flood now. And the rainbow. Those who don't believe in God, even if you don't believe in this, the rainbow should send a message around the world. What is this in the sky?
Mm-hmm.
I like to use the rainbow as a platform to witness. I like to use the rainbow as a platform to witness to someone.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the rainbow?
Who put it there and why is it there?
So those who don't believe in the Creator, those who don't believe in the Bible, that rainbow must send a message. What is this in the sky every now and again? It must send a message for that person to go and find out what this rainbow is all about. And of course, it can lead them to the word.
Thank you. The covenant. God was trying to tell us with the rainbow to remember his promises to us. The author pulled the rainbow, but there are so many promises that God has made. And as we read scriptures, we know there's one that he made that I take personally. He says, when mother and father forsake you, then I will pick you up. We must always remember the promises that God. That's what the author was trying to pull out of this rainbow. The covenant. It's a contract. We must never forget God's promises to us. And we don't know those promises until we begin to read his word. So I'm going to say to you, you should remember to read the word of God because it brings you comfort. You know, there are people that remember texts when things are tough. I remember a story told of a woman who is having trouble because she's sick and she's just waiting for the daylight to come. Because in the night, do you know that in the night everything happens worse? And she's sick, but she's waiting for the night to come. And why is she waiting, Brother Brutus? Because she remembered that text where God says, weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. We must remember, and that, Sister Gittins, kept her alive. If we can find enough to keep us throughout the night, we will be alive in the day. We must remember the promises. Don't forget the promises that God has made with us.
So parents always say to their children, nothing good happens after midnight.
Yes, that's when they want to keep you in the house. And it's true. So the idea behind Monday is that we should what? Remember the promises of God. Don't lose those. Now, that was Sunday. Monday says, concerning the days of the past. What are we pulling out of here? Let me hear you. History. Come on, talk to me. Remember the days of the past. What are you saying? Deliverance. Talk with me. Remember the days of the past. What are we pulling here?
In remembering the past, you can appreciate the present and appreciate
in remembering the past, you can appreciate the present and appreciate me more. What God, when I read this, right? When I read this, I remember, and I said I would share this with you. I was 20 years old. I had just turned 20. Right? Say it again. I had just turned 20. I used to work at a bauxite company in Alkion, Yorton. I don't know if any of you know them places, right? That's where I was working. I had gotten baptized like 2 years earlier in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I was running around, as you said, doing crusades and doing all these different type of stuff. And it so happened that I was encouraged to leave the job at the bauxite company and to go and work for the church, right? And I took the encouragement. But as a young man, here it is, I have to leave home. I am leaving St. Catherine in Linstead, if you all know in them places around here, in Yorton. That's where I'm from, right? I am leaving there, and I am now heading to St. Mary. Never been to St. Mary in all of my life, right? But I'm heading to St. Mary, to a place called Port Maria, because that is where now I'm supposed to go and take up a new assignment that I did not get a letter for or anything. So I have a bird in the bush that I was going to, a bird in the hand, that I was heading now to go for one in the bush. And all I heard was pure promises. But they encouraged me, in the church, those who are, God is speaking to them, or so they thought, that God is speaking with them. Leave your job at the bauxite company as a young man. And listen, that was a good job. Going home, that is when the dollar had some value. I used to go home every week with about $450. Right now they're going to tell you about some thousands of dollars, right? But it was $450 every week, and I used to eat big. Oh, yeah. You see that text they talk about when you go in and you start to eat and get to fill? Oh, yes, I used to eat and get filled. As a boy, you usually get the chicken back and the chicken neck. When I was working there, I had a whole chicken. I could choose which piece I wanted, Sister Gittins. So here I am. I am supposed to leave. I left my job, packed my little bag. It's a little bag because I didn't have anything. And I lay down that night so unsure of where I'm going. I was fearful. I was afraid, literally afraid. I'm going into the unknown. Nobody knows me there. And I lay down. I didn't have a bed, so it was a piece of wood that I lay down and slept on that night. And when I go off to sleep, I prayed and I asked the Lord to take my life. I did not want to see the next day. And there's a reason I'm telling you the story. It says the days of the past. I woke up the next morning. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was disappointed that I was alive. Very disappointed. Nonetheless, seeing that I was alive and I had already left my job, might as well I continue the rest of the journey. So I went into Linstead, somewhere off down near Vanity Fair. I don't know if you all know them places. And I took the North Star bus. Yes, that's how far I'm coming from. I know you all don't know them buses anymore. You used to live around that side? Oh, okay. So you know where I'm talking about. I took the North Star bus and it headed up Devil's Race Course. You heard about it. Into Guyshill, through Carronall, through Newcastle, into Highgate. Then it goes down to Port Maria, and I got off with my little bag. And that's where I met the current Governor General, because he was at that time Education Director. And they gave me a job to teach at Port Maria High School. And I taught there. And from there, I left and I went to West Indies College. And from there, I left and I came here. Remember the past. A scared little fellow, but I've seen where God has led me. Think of that. Sister White, you know those places I'm talking about. Yes. Right? I've seen where God has led me. Why is it that God wants us to remember the things of the past? You cannot have a present and you can never appreciate the future. The problem that many of us have, there's this old song that says that count your blessings every day, count them one by one. I may be mixing up two songs together. I know I may be doing that. But the point is that we should sit down and do some retrospect and some reflection and see what God has done. Now, I'm not talking about where he has brought you from now, no, but what he has done for you. I don't know, but I was told that there was a time when I was a little wad and I developed some serious disease and illness. So bad. And I know it was bad because when I was 14 and I went in to do my those exams to go to high school, the doctor, Dr. Melbourne, I don't know if any of you know Dr. Melbourne from Linstead, but Dr. Melbourne, I heard him say to my father, "Is this the same Dalton?" My father said, "Yes." He said, "No, the same Dalton." And my father said, "Yes, that's the same Dalton." Now, I'm not my kid. I couldn't ask what was that all about. I got a slap upside my head. It's not like the kids today. But so when my father came out, I said to him, "Father, what was that all about?" He said, "That was one of the doctors that gave you up to die when you were a child because you were so sick they did not expect you to live." We must remember what God has done for us. We must remember. Dr. Binns? Yeah, he was the first man to give me an injection. Okay. You know, it's good when somebody can talk about the people that you know. But the point here is that what? Remember, God, no, some of you maybe want me to go through all of these texts. But no, we got to pull it off the text and put it in our own personal lives. Otherwise, it make no difference to you. Some of you leave everything you have in Jamaica and come here with nothing. Living with family members who kick you out after 6 months or start treating you bad after 6 months. But look where you are today. You must remember what God has done for you. One of the problems we have in our church today is that we tend to forget what God, and sometimes we allow the bad things to override the good things. But let me tell you something, brothers and sisters, if it wasn't for the good things, you wouldn't have been here, even though we dwell on the bad things. You must remember. You know, my mother said something to me one day, and I keep it in mind, and I give God thanks. She said to me, "You have come into this country, and ever since you have been here, you have always had a job. You must remember the things that God," and all of you, if you look back in your own lives. Now, let me tell you something why. Yes, Brother Oshin, go ahead.
Joseph. And for the time I'm here, I am trying to play the role of a Joseph. Listen to me now, you don't have to follow me, you know. The Lord took many of us to this country. We must remember those who help us along the journey back home. People need help. And I have developed my own charity ministry, where I would come to Ella Burke and say, "Burke, you know that at my home church I have 4 debts and I need help to bury them." And Burke will say, "You will check me next week and I'll give you a A family may need roof. And I will come to Sister Anderson and say, Anderson, sister really need a roof. You know, can you help me? We must remember back home. Remember those who need help. A friend of mine at work said, Ocean, you know that when I was back home, I had one shoes. You don't know what that brother is talking about. And I smiled. And now he has yellow shoes to choose from. And I smiled. And I said, thank God for where he took us from. Remember God.
Yes. Yes, Sister Khan. Mm-hmm. We must remember, I'm trying to emphasize a point here. We must remember what God has done for us. Look back through your lives. There's not one person in here who God has not done something for. So when they look back, and let me just go back to one of the texts, because what I like about the looking back was when he talked about the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. You all know what that was? It wasn't just a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire, no. If you know anything about deserts, what condition does a desert has at night? It's freezing. It's one of those phenomena that we really don't understand. But at night, the desert is cold. God was a pillar of fire. You got to light a fire to stay warm. In the desert, it's what? In the day, it's scorching hot. It was a pillar of cloud, a shadow over the... Come on. Brothers and sisters, look in your lives. You don't have to look in the person next to you. Look in your own personal life and remember the things of the past. You may think it was Sister Gittins that did it for you. Yes, God, she was an instrument in God's hand. You may think it was brother Dreadlocks right here, but he was just an instrument, Brother Johnson, in God's hands. Remember, the woman sitting down there and she was praying for food to eat, and some kids passing out there heard her praying and decided to play a trick on her. She said, Lord, she ain't got no food, and they decided they're going to buy the food and throw it in there and hear what she's going to say. And when they buy the food and they throw it on the veranda and they run, and she said, we are the one, not God. And they say, yeah, you may be the hands. How she go? How you go, Bishop? God. Exactly. You know what I'm talking about. We must not forget. We must look back sometimes. You know, Pastor asked me one day, he said, do you talk to your children about your struggles in life? And I said to him, Pastor, yes, I tell them. Do you share with your children? Let them see what God has done for you, and that God will also do for them. When we remember those things, it strengthens our faith. And so when hard time hit us, all we are doing now is just waiting for God to play his hand again. Moving on. Which other one really? He said, take heed lest you forget. So we are going on to Tuesday, right? Yeah, we just reached Tuesday. Tuesday. He says here, what are we getting out of this? Talk to me. No, we didn't get to that one yet. We're there Tuesday. What did we get out of that one? All right. Let me tell you. What God is saying here is that because you will forget, teach it. And that's what we just intimated just now. Tell them what God did for you. Tell your children, teach your children. They may not accept it now. A friend of mine last night, I was talking to her, and she said that her kids, her older kids, they are coming to her because they need advice. I have a son. He's 20, going to be 21 next week, I think. And everything now, he comes. I have a daughter. She don't really care much because as far as she's concerned, I don't know much about life. That's yours like that, right? There's a certain stage where your children don't think you know anything. And they know everything. Leave them alone. That's just a phase. After a while, guess what happened? They're going to recognize that daddy and mommy knows everything. Yes, sir. Make we laugh. If it is a sin to forget. Well, I will say that forgetfulness is because of sin. But I wouldn't say it's a sin to forget. And because God knows that we will forget, he is setting up things for us to remember. First, he says the covenant. Keep the covenant in mind. Then he says, remember what I did for you. And then he said, because he knows you will forget, Brother Oshing, he said, teach it to your children before you forget. Growth. Yes.
Sin has damaged our brain cells, and so that is what causes us to forget. And that is why the Lord says to us, remember and keep studying, keep repeating it. Because that is what we have to do as we grow. Some of us grow as we grow older. We have to write down things to remember. We have to keep saying it several times to remember. Like sometimes you might probably just walk into a room to do something and you forget.
Totally what? You have to go back outside to remember. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's a normal process because of our growth and because of what sin has done in damaging our brain cells. Yes.
Elder Brown, I'm coming back to you.
No, yes, it is a sin to forget. I'm just thinking that sometimes some of us have had some experience in life that we wish it didn't happen. And we do everything just to forget that part of our life. Which it should not be, but there are times that we have some experience that we just don't want to think about it. Mm-hmm. And we do anything to have it erased from our life.
To your point. To your point. Don't lose your point. Don't lose your point. To Elder Brown's point. I was talking to a lady one day. The lady plays television 24/7. Right? She's a Seventh-day Adventist lady, but she plays television 24/7. She don't really care what is on it. And probably if you ask her what's going on, she has no clue. I asked her one day, I said, why do you play the television 24/7? She said to me, and this touched me. This touched me so much. She says, when I play the television, I forget my past. Because there are things in my past that I don't want to remember. And the television take it away. So to your point, Elder Brown, there are things that we want to forget. Probably those things bother us because we don't talk about them. Because sometimes, in truth and in fact, there are things that haunt us that we would like to talk about, Sandra, but you feel that if you talk to Pastor Burke about it, the next thing is going to become one of his sermons in the pulpit. And those are realities. Or, if it's not a pastor, it may be somebody in the church, and the next thing you hear, the whole church has it. Because we have forgotten what it is like to be a community. Somebody over here.
I can't remember now, but I'm saying you have some parts that you don't want to But sometimes situation come and it's right there. You think you forget about it, but it's right up back. And also, if you forget your past, you will seem to repeat it. You know, I'm sad, and as you were bringing the lesson to everyday life, there's things in our past, and I'm so happy because some people don't want the people to know their past. I just share my past with people because you know what? What I went through and what God has brought me to. You understand? So that alone is a testimony to somebody. See, if God did it for me, he can do it for you.
Amen. Brother Oshing.
Retention is very, very important. Can you imagine looking at this Bible here? These great men, Adam come right down, 900 plus years, all these great men. There was no written record. They had to be passing on knowledge to their sons and sons right on the line. Master brain. What a God.
And that is how we have it today, because they were passing it orally. And as we get older, we tend to forget. I hear this pastor get up one day and he says that there are 3 things that he remembered, that he knows. 3 signs that you're getting old. 3 signs, he said, that you're getting old. And so the first one is that you start to forget things. And they said to him, what's the second and the third? And he said, I cannot remember. Teach our children. One of the problems we have today is that we don't teach in the church anymore. We don't teach our children anymore. So we have a church like the Catholic Church where you have a whole bunch of senior folks and no young people. We have young people in our church, and we must maintain our young people in our church. And we are to teach them the principles. And we ought to be careful how we teach those principles. I'm going to say this. We have to be careful how we teach those principles, because the way that I codify and practice those principles may not be the same way in this generation that those very principles will be codified and practiced. Amen. What does that mean? It means, Sister Sandra, that the principle doesn't change. Yes. You still don't kill. But the way you don't kill may be different. The way we say, the way we, you know, there is a guy up in the Bronx last week or some time ago. He was preaching a sermon. I think all of you may have seen it on YouTube by now. Right? Robinson, I think was his name. And he said something, right? He said something that does not comport well in our society. Right? And so they killed him, literally, because they took away his job and took away everything. And it was the very same Seventh-day Adventist church that destroys him, right? So he said something that does not comport well. So what I'm saying, the principle, nobody cared about the principle that he was trying to bring across. All they cared about was the word that was said. And we in our churches today, right, even right here in Shelter Rock, we have new members that come inside. We're talking about teaching. We have new members that come inside the church that they may not look the way you want them to look. But how you address that? You understand what I'm trying to say? The principles still remain. Wear modest clothes. That doesn't change. But how you address that? How you address that? I may go up to Sister Sandra and I say something to her, and the way that I said it. You know, there's a thing about, I like the Proverbs. He said, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pitchers of silver. And let me say this also. Let me say this. While we are on this point right here, let me just share this also. In every society and every time, every epoch that we live, things change. There was a time, hear me, Sister Anderson, when a modest dress is one that drags the mud on the floor. There was a time when that was modesty. Then there was a time when modesty means it must be at your chin. What you call right down here, sir? Your shank or what, you know? Yeah. And then there was a time when modesty must be, it was 3 inches below your knee. Do you see how the times are changing? Today, modesty means that you are seeing the curves as long as you're not naked. And guess what happened? I am from the school of yesteryear, and I'm going to take that offensively. And if I don't understand the context or understand the times in which I'm living, I could offend that young lady. Are you following me? You all look like you don't like what I'm saying. Let's. Yes, sir, quickly, because I don't want to see sister. Oh, she got up already.
Yes, sir. A preacher will preach for 40 years or 50 years, baptize thousands, conduct hundreds of seminars, marriages, and that minister will do one wrong and you cut him down. That pastor, you refer to pastor, I call him, because he's my friend and former pastor. And I've been broken since that statement was made. And even now, Greater New York Conference officials don't even call him man and pray with him. I called him and I prayed with him. And he said, devil, that's my hometown name. I'm not giving up on my Jesus. And I'm going to press on. So I'm just saying that a minister like him, 40 years in the church, preach all over the world, baptized thousands. One sin, we cut him down. And the officer don't even call him and pray with him.
That is...
Finally, Pastor.
Okay.
My sister sent me a text from Brown.
Church, please.
The word forgiveness seems no longer exists in our church. What a shameful thing. They are absolutely afraid of the word and the consequences.
All right. Now, we're not going to discuss that issue, right? We don't... But I brought it up because I was trying to give a teaching element to say that we must understand the times in which we are living. It is not necessarily that you are wrong, but the context. And what you have said is correct. What you have said is true and correct, but we are not going to go any further with that particular one. We could discuss it at another time. The lesson continues on the Wednesday, and it says that when you have eaten, and I love this. I know some folks don't like these type of stuff. He said, when you eat and your belly full, and niggeritis set in, and you want to relax and, remember not to forget God. What was he talking about? He says, when you are brought into this land, and I like this. I love this part. When you are brought into this land where you get iron and copper, for us today, that don't mean anything. But for them in those days, that was like diamonds and gold. Are you following me? When you get into this place where you have food galore to eat, you get iron, you get copper, you get gold, you find diamonds. In other words, when you get to where God wants you to be in that land and you become rich. I love that. I love that. I don't know if you all are getting what I'm seeing here. God is saying through Moses, Brother Brutus, that a part of God's plan for you is for you to get into that promised land where you have water, where you have diamond, where you have gold, where you have houses, where you have food. Are you following what I'm trying to say? God is saying, my plan for you is for you to get wealth. I know you all don't want to hear this piece because you all love the poverty thing. Yeah, we love the poverty thing. That's what they teach us. And if you see the author in Friday's note, he tried to bring back that poverty thing in our head to kill it, right? He says that when you get into this land where you now have wealth, remember, it is God that gives you the power to get that wealth. He never said to throw away the wealth and become poor, you know. Be wealthy, but remember. Remember. And so somebody said to me, you know, and the author, I hate the fact that he tagged this on Friday's lesson. I don't know if you all read it. And he tagged it on right under Sister White's writing. Somebody said, did you see what Sister White? I said, Sister White didn't say that. That's the author that said that. That's the plantation mentality, to keep us in poverty all the days of our life. And let me tell you something, if you're not careful, right here in the church, you'll become poor. And while you're becoming poor, they're digging you for the last penny that you have. Let me put it that clear. God says when you get over there and you have acquired wealth, remember that it is He, God. And so the message today is that for those of you whose eyes have been opened and you're trying to acquire some wealth, acquire all that you can acquire, but remember God gave it to you and Shelter Rock needs some. Are you following me? Because the church has to be supported. And God will give it to you. But let me tell you something, some of you are not going to get any because you don't believe in it. Your minds have been seared since you were young to say that money is bad. And it's too late for you to get it now. So some of you are going to live poor for the rest of your life. But for those of you who are deciding to make a difference, remember when you get it, it is God that gives you the power to get it. And He wants some back in His church. Are you following me? Yes, sir. Johnson, right? The wealth don't turn you into a different person. You were what you were before the wealth comes. The wealth just amplify what you were. There are some people, let me tell you, put it straight and plain. No matter how much you have or don't have, whether you're poor or you're rich, you're just not going to serve God. So don't blame it on wealth. Whether you're poor or rich, there are some folks, no matter what it is, they will just not give God the honor and the glory He deserves. And some of those people who will not give God honor and glory, they become rich. And a lot of them in the church remain poor. Still not giving God. You think because you're in church, you're giving God honor and glory? Let me be frank with you. Some of us don't even begin to give God honor and glory yet. And the only reason some of us are in church is... throw me out today. But the only reason some of us are in church, Jesus said it plain. He says, see all those people following me? It's just a fish and bread they're following me for now. Some of us just come to church just to see what we can get. We have no love for God. And why do you think the church continues to be in chaos and can't move? Because there are people planted in here. Some of them poor as a church mouse. Trying to get out of the church what they can get. And the church cannot give it to them, and so they create problems in the church. Yes, sir. I just don't want us to blame wealth. Wealth don't corrupt anybody. It's your mindset that you have. And this is what God is saying, that His people, when you go over there, just remember, I give you the power to get wealth. It's not money that is bad. It's the love of it. Yes, sir.
One of our national heroes back in Jamaica used this powerful word.
Okay.
I rather die on beyond the gallows than to live in slavery.
Sound like I'm sharp.
I'm sharp, yeah. Let's talk about remember that you are a slave.
Yes, sir.
Am I a slave?
The Bible said, the Bible didn't say remember that you are a slave, you know. The Bible said remember that you were. Not that you are. You were. And Sister Gunter just tell me it's cut off point. This is something I want to bring across to us as black people. I tell you, if you have me up here teaching, I cannot go without touching black history. All right? We as black folks, our foreparents, those people that Moses was talking to, they were not slaves, The whole of them that were slaves were dead already. Just as we are not slaves. Our foreparents were slaves, they are dead off already. But we were slaves. And just the same point. We, today, practical first, as black folks, we want to forget that we were slaves. And there are people in our country and in our world that want us to forget that we were slaves. But God is saying, never forget that you were slaves. Because if you forget, you're going to recognize that I brought you freedom. And as Sister Anderson said, we are all, I would love to use the word were, but I can't. Brother Oshing asks if we are slaves. So I'm going to say, I don't know about you. I know I'm a slave to sin. And I am trying to be redeemed for God to redeem me. And I think that's what the Apostle Paul bring out in the last part of the lesson, in the text from Paul. We are all slaves to sin. But we have a Redeemer. We have a Redeemer. And that's what he wants us to remember, that even though you were slaves, we are redeemed. And I'm going to say, yes, we are indeed redeemed. It is for us to claim that redemption. And that redemption comes through Jesus Christ and him crucified. Let us not forget, brothers and sisters, God's promises, what he has done for us. When you get rich, don't forget him. Teach your children not to forget him. Remember where we are coming from, that he has brought us this far, and he's willing to bring us further as long as we don't forget.
Thank you very much, Pastor. And I just want to encourage us just to be out for Sabbath School next week, again at 10 o'clock, where we can share our thoughts. I see that we all had a lot of thoughts to share, but some people just didn't get a chance. But come next week again, and we will continue our study. I just want to welcome all of us who made it to Sabbath School this morning on time. And I just want to encourage us just to study our lessons so that we can be able to share our thoughts, because when we come together, it's a teaching session. So we come to learn from each other. At this time, I'm going to pray as we end off Sabbath School. Shall we stand, please? And can I call on somebody to pray at this time? And so I'll ask Brother Johnson, can you pray to close us, please? Amen. Amen. Okay, let us prepare for the divine worship at this time.
Yes, church, I just say happy Sabbath. Just remind you that we are still doing our harvesting gathering. We have not yet reached our goal. So I'm asking us all to do